The smell of rotting vegetables and spoiled meat hit Olivia Bennett's nose as she plunged her trembling hands deeper into the wooden crate behind the deeming saloon, searching desperately for anything edible in the sweltering New Mexico heat of 1882. Her stomach had stopped growling hours ago, replaced by a hollow ache that made her dizzy every time she stood too quickly. She had been in this dusty border town for 3 days now, her last $5 stolen while she slept in an alleyway, her carefully saved train ticket to California nothing but a distant memory. The sun beat down mercilessly on her bare head, her bonnet lost somewhere along the road from Silver City, and sweat trickled down her spine beneath the threadbare cotton dress that had once been a respectable shade of blue. Her fingers closed around something firm, possibly a half-eaten apple, and she pulled it free with a gasp of relief. The fruit was brown on one side, clearly thrown away days ago, but Olivia had long since abandoned pride. She raised it to her lips when a deep voice behind her made her freeze. "That cannot be fit for eating, miss." Olivia spun around, clutching the apple to her chest like treasure, and found herself staring at a tall cowboy with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of whiskey in lamplight. He wore dusty leather chaps over worn denim, a brown Stetson pushed back on his head, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the ends. A kerchief hung loosely around his neck, and his hand rested casually on the gun belt at his hip, though not in threat. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most, with the kind of steady, capable bearing that came from years of hard work under an unforgiving sky. "It is mine," Olivia said, her voice cracking from disuse and thirst. She hated how defensive she sounded, how small and desperate. "I found it first." The cowboy's expression shifted from surprise to something that looked almost like pain. He took a step closer, and Olivia noticed the way he moved, careful and deliberate, as though approaching a spooked horse. "How long since you have eaten something proper?" "That is none of your concern, sir." Olivia lifted her chin, trying to summon the dignity her mother had instilled in her back in Pennsylvania, back when she had been a teacher's daughter with prospects and a hope chest. That girl seemed like a stranger now. "Samuel Lawson," the cowboy said, touching the brim of his hat. "And I reckon it became my concern the moment I saw a lady digging through refuse behind the place I happen to own part of. That is my saloon you are standing behind, and I cannot in good conscience let anyone, let alone a woman alone, starve in the shadow of my establishment." Olivia's grip on the apple loosened slightly. "You own the Lucky Star, half of it. My partner runs the gambling tables while I manage the cattle operation outside town. I was just bringing in the week's supply of beef." Samuel gestured toward the street where Olivia could now see a wagon loaded with canvas-wrapped bundles. "Come inside. Let me get you a proper meal." "I have no money to pay you," Olivia said, the admission burning her throat worse than thirst. She had been raised to pay her own way, to never accept charity, to stand on her own 2 feet. But she had also been raised to eat 3 meals a day, sleep in a bed with clean sheets, and believe that hard work and virtue would always be rewarded. The past 6 months had taught her that the world cared little for what she had been raised to believe. "Did I ask for payment?" Samuel's voice was gentle but firm. "You will never go hungry again with me. That is a promise, and I do not make promises I cannot keep. Now please, miss, come inside before you collapse in this heat. You look about ready to fall over, and I would rather not have to carry you. Though I will if I must." Something in his eyes made Olivia believe him. Perhaps it was the directness of his gaze, or the way he had not looked at her with pity but with simple human concern. Or perhaps it was simply that she had reached the end of her rope and had no pride left to cling to. She dropped the rotten apple back into the crate and nodded. The interior of the Lucky Star was blessedly cool and dim after the brutal sunshine. Samuel led her past the main room where a few early drinkers sat at tables, and a man in a green vest shuffled cards behind the bar. They went through a door at the back into a small office that smelled of leather and tobacco. Samuel pulled out a chair for her, and Olivia sank into it gratefully, her legs trembling with relief. "Wait here," he said, and disappeared back through the door. Olivia sat in the quiet office, taking in the details around her. A large desk dominated the space, covered with neat stacks of papers and ledgers. A map of New Mexico territory hung on one wall, marked with various notations in careful handwriting. Everything spoke of a man who paid attention, who kept track of details, who built something worth maintaining. It was so different from the chaos her life had become. Samuel returned carrying a tray laden with food. Fresh bread, still warm from the oven. A thick slice of roasted beef. Boiled potatoes with butter. Green beans that looked like they had been picked that morning. A tall glass of cool water, and a bowl of peach cobbler that made Olivia's eyes sting with sudden tears. "Eat slowly," Samuel advised, setting the tray on the desk in front of her. "Your stomach will need time to adjust if you have been going without." Olivia wanted to devour everything in sight, but she forced herself to follow his advice, taking small bites and chewing thoroughly. The first taste of real food after days of near starvation was almost overwhelming. The bread dissolved on her tongue like a blessing. The beef was tender and seasoned with salt and pepper. Even the simple potatoes tasted like the finest delicacy she had ever known. Samuel sat in the chair across from her, watching with an expression she could not quite read. Not satisfaction exactly, though there was some of that. More like he was witnessing something important, something that mattered. "Thank you," Olivia managed between bites. "You are very kind." "Just decent," Samuel corrected. "There is a difference. Kindness is extra. Decency is the minimum we owe each other. Now, if you do not mind me asking, how did you end up in Deeming picking through trash? You have the sound of education in your voice, and those hands, even roughened up as they are now, were not made for hard labor." Olivia took a long drink of water, buying herself time to decide how much to tell this stranger who had shown her more compassion in 10 minutes than she had received in months. "I was a teacher in Pennsylvania. After my parents died of influenza last winter, I found out they had debts I knew nothing about. The bank took the house. I had an aunt in San Francisco who wrote that I could come live with her, help with her boarding house. I used the last of my money for a train ticket, but I got sick in Kansas City and had to stop. Used up all my funds on a doctor and lodging. I thought I could find work, save up again, but nobody wants to hire a woman traveling alone with no references and no place to stay." "How did you get from Kansas City to Deeming?" Olivia looked down at her plate. "I walked some. Caught rides on wagons when I could. A family heading to Arizona let me travel with them for a while in exchange for watching their children. When we reached Silver City, they went north and I came south, thinking a border town might have more opportunities. I was wrong." Samuel leaned back in his chair, his jaw tight. "You walked across Kansas and half of New Mexico, alone." "I stayed with churches when I could. Slept outside when I had to." Olivia met his eyes, daring him to judge her. "I did what I needed to survive. I am not ashamed of that." "You should not be," Samuel said quietly. "You should be proud. That took more courage than most people have, but your traveling days are done now. You will stay here in Deeming. I will help you find proper work and lodging." "You do not even know me," Olivia protested, even as hope fluttered weakly in her chest. "Why would you do this?" "Because someone should have done it sooner. Because you are a human being in need, and I have the means to help. Because Samuel paused, then continued with careful honesty. Because I look at you and I see someone who has been knocked down by circumstances beyond her control, and I was raised to believe that when you see someone down, you help them up. It is as simple as that. It was not simple at all, Olivia thought, but she was too tired and too grateful to argue. She finished the meal slowly, savoring every bite while Samuel explained his plans. There was a widow named Mrs. Harriet Chen who ran a boarding house 2 streets over. She had been looking for help with the cooking and cleaning in exchange for room and board plus a small wage. Samuel knew her well, had sold her beef for years, and would vouch for Olivia's character even though they had just met. "I am vouching for your determination and your dignity," Samuel said when Olivia questioned this. "Anyone who crosses half the country on foot rather than give up has both in spades. The rest, Mrs. Chen can judge for herself." By the time Olivia finished eating, the sun was starting its descent toward the western mountains. Samuel walked her the 2 blocks to Mrs. Chen's boarding house, a neat adobe building with blue shutters and a garden of herbs growing in the front. The widow herself answered the door, a small Chinese woman probably in her 50s with intelligent eyes and silver threading through her black hair. "Mrs. Chen, this is Miss Olivia Bennett. She is new to Deeming and looking for work. I thought she might be the help you have been seeking." Samuel made the introductions with an easy courtesy that suggested he did this sort of thing regularly. Mrs. Chen looked Olivia up and down, taking in the stained dress, the worn boots, the sunburned face, but her expression was not unkind. "You know how to cook, Miss Bennett?" "Yes, madam. My mother taught me. I can make bread, stews, roasts, pies, preserves. I can clean and do laundry. I can read and write and do figures if you need help with accounts. I need someone who will work hard and treat my boarders with respect. Mr. Lawson here is one of my best customers, and I trust his judgment. But I will be honest with you. I cannot pay much. $5 a week plus room and board. You will have Sundays off after breakfast is cleaned up. You will share a room with my daughter Rose until she marries next month, then you will have it to yourself. Is this acceptable?" $5 a week sounded like a fortune to Olivia. "More than acceptable, madam. When would you like me to start?" "Right now, if you are able." "You can help me prepare dinner for the boarders. There are 6 of them, all men who work various jobs in town. We serve at 6 o'clock sharp." Mrs. Chen opened the door wider, inviting Olivia inside. Olivia turned to Samuel, words inadequate to express what she felt. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. I will repay you somehow." "Just take care of yourself," Samuel said, his whiskey-colored eyes warm. "That is all the repayment I need, though I do eat at Mrs. Chen's establishment twice a week, so I imagine I will see you around." He touched his hat and walked away, his long stride carrying him back toward the main street. Olivia watched him go, this stranger who had appeared in her darkest moment and pulled her back from the edge of despair, and wondered if she believed in angels after all. The work at Mrs. Chen's boarding house was hard but satisfying. Olivia woke at 5 each morning to start the fires and begin breakfast. She cooked and cleaned and washed dishes and scrubbed floors until her back ached and her hands were red and raw. But she did it all with a grateful heart because she had a roof over her head, food in her stomach, and $5 at the end of each week that she saved carefully in a small tin under her bed. Rose Chen was 19 and cheerfully helpful, teaching Olivia the tricks of the kitchen and the preferences of each boarder. She chattered about her upcoming wedding to a clerk at the general store, showed Olivia the dress she was sewing, and confided her dreams of having a little house with a garden and maybe 3 or 4 children. "What about you?" Rose asked one evening as they peeled potatoes together. "Did you leave a sweetheart back in Pennsylvania?" "No," Olivia said. "There was a man my parents wanted me to marry, a banker's son. But I did not love him, and after they died, he made it clear he was not interested in a penniless teacher. I am better off without him." "You will find someone," Rose said confidently. "You are pretty and smart and you work hard. Men notice that." One man certainly seemed to notice. True to his word, Samuel Lawson took dinner at Mrs. Chen's boarding house twice a week, on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He always arrived promptly at 6, removed his hat when he entered, and greeted everyone politely before taking his seat. Olivia served the meals family style, carrying out platters of food and setting them on the long table where the boarders sat. Samuel always thanked her when she set his plate down, always asked how she was settling in, always treated her with the same steady respect he showed everyone else. Olivia found herself looking forward to those dinners, found herself taking extra care with her appearance on Tuesdays and Thursdays, brushing her hair until it shone and pinning it up neatly, wearing the better of her 2 dresses that Mrs. Chen had given her from a trunk of old clothes. 3 weeks after she started working at the boarding house, Samuel lingered after the other boarders had left. He helped Olivia carry dishes back to the kitchen, ignoring her protests that he was a paying customer and should not be working. "I grew up on a ranch," Samuel said, stacking plates on the counter. "I have washed more dishes than I can count. A few more will not hurt me. Besides, I wanted to talk to you without the whole table listening in." Olivia's heart did a strange little jump in her chest. "About what?" "There is a social at the church this Saturday evening, dancing and refreshments. I was wondering if you would care to attend. With me, I mean. As my companion." Samuel looked almost nervous, a contrast to his usual calm confidence. Olivia's first instinct was to refuse. She had no proper dress for a social, no experience with courting, and no business encouraging a man like Samuel Lawson, who could surely do better than a penniless drifter he had found digging through trash. But when she looked at his face, at the genuine hope in his eyes, she found herself nodding. "I would like that," she said softly. "Though I should warn you, I have not danced in years." "Then we will be well matched," Samuel said, relief evident in his smile. "I have 2 left feet and the rhythm of a wounded buffalo, but I enjoy the music and the company promises to be exceptional." The days until Saturday felt both too long and too short. Rose insisted on altering one of her own dresses for Olivia, a green calico with white flowers that brought out the hazel in Olivia's eyes. Mrs. Chen contributed a pair of good shoes that had belonged to her daughter. On Saturday afternoon, Rose helped Olivia arrange her honey-brown hair in a style more elegant than her usual simple bun, with soft curls framing her face. "You look beautiful," Rose said, stepping back to admire her work. "Mr. Lawson will not be able to take his eyes off you." Olivia studied herself in the small mirror, barely recognizing the woman who looked back. She had gained back some of the weight she had lost during her travels. Her face had filled out again, the gaunt hollows beneath her cheekbones disappearing. Regular meals and steady work had restored some of the vitality she thought she had lost forever. She looked young again. She looked hopeful. Samuel arrived at 7 o'clock sharp, dressed in clean black trousers and a white shirt with a string tie. He had shaved and his dark hair was neatly combed. When he saw Olivia, he stopped in the doorway of the boarding house, and Olivia saw something flicker in his eyes that made her breath catch. "You look lovely, Miss Bennett," he said quietly. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. You look very handsome yourself." They walked to the church together through the warm evening air. Deeming was settling down for the night, lights glowing in windows, the sound of a piano drifting from somewhere nearby. The sky was turning deep purple in the east, stars just beginning to appear. It was the kind of evening that made Olivia grateful to be alive, grateful for every hard step that had brought her to this moment. The church social was already in full swing when they arrived. Lanterns hung from the trees in the churchyard, casting dancing shadows on the ground. A fiddler and a guitarist sat on the church steps, playing lively tunes while couples spun and laughed. Tables laden with food lined one wall, and children raced between the adults, playing tag in the gathering darkness. Samuel introduced Olivia to what seemed like half the town. There was Doc Harrison, an elderly man with kind eyes who reminded Olivia of her father. There was Maria Gonzalez, who ran the general store with her husband, and who welcomed Olivia warmly in accented English. There was Frank Potter, Samuel's business partner at the Lucky Star, a heavyset man with a booming laugh. Everyone was friendly, curious about the new woman in town, but not invasive or rude. When the music shifted to a slower waltz, Samuel offered Olivia his hand. "Shall we risk it?" They joined the other couples on the makeshift dance floor. Samuel placed one hand carefully on Olivia's waist, taking her other hand in his, and they began to move. He had not been lying about his dancing skills. He was stiff and a bit clumsy, occasionally stepping on her toes, but Olivia found she did not mind. There was something endearing about his concentration, the way he focused so intently on getting the steps right. "You are doing fine," Olivia said softly. "I am trying not to embarrass you," Samuel admitted. "I spend more time with cattle than people. The cattle do not care if you can waltz." Olivia laughed, a real laugh that came from somewhere deep inside her. She could not remember the last time she had laughed like that. "I assure you I am not embarrassed. I am grateful. A month ago I was sleeping in alleyways and eating garbage. Now I am dancing at a church social in a pretty dress with a good man. That is not embarrassing. That is a miracle." Samuel's hand tightened slightly on her waist. "You give me too much credit. You are the one who survived. You are the one who kept going when most people would have given up. I just pointed you toward Mrs. Chen's boarding house." "You did more than that," Olivia said. "You saw me as a person when I felt like nothing. You reminded me that kindness still existed in the world. You cannot know what that meant to me, what it still means." They danced in silence for a moment, the music swirling around them, the lantern light soft and golden. Olivia was intensely aware of Samuel's hand on her waist, of the warmth of his palm against hers, of the solid strength of his presence. She was aware, too, of the feelings stirring inside her, feelings she had not expected and was not sure she was ready for. When the song ended, Samuel did not immediately release her. He looked down at her, his whiskey-colored eyes searching her face. "Miss Bennett, Olivia, I hope this is not too forward, but I would like to see you again, not just at Mrs. Chen's dining table, properly like this." "I would like that too," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then may I call on you tomorrow afternoon? Perhaps we could take a walk if you are free." "I am free after 2 o'clock on Sundays. A walk would be lovely." Samuel smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his serious face, and Olivia felt something shift in her chest, some locked door swinging open to let light flood in. The weeks that followed established a pattern that Olivia came to treasure. Samuel called on her every Sunday afternoon, and they would walk through Deeming together, sometimes out to the edge of town where the desert stretched away in all directions, dotted with sage and mesquite. They talked about everything and nothing. Samuel told her about growing up on a ranch in Texas, about losing his parents to a Comanche raid when he was 17, about making his way west and eventually settling in Deeming. Olivia told him about her childhood in Pennsylvania, about her father who had taught her to love books, about her mother who had been strict but loving. They discovered they were both 24, born just 3 months apart. They both loved thunderstorms and hated the taste of coffee. They both believed in hard work and fair dealing and the importance of keeping your word. The more time Olivia spent with Samuel, the more she admired him. He was honest without being harsh, strong without being domineering, confident without being arrogant. He was also, she was coming to realize, in love with her. She saw it in the way he looked at her when he thought she was not paying attention, in the way he always positioned himself between her and the street when they walked, protecting her from dust and traffic, in the way he listened when she talked, really listened, as though every word she spoke mattered, in the small gifts he brought her, nothing expensive or inappropriate, just little things like a hair ribbon in her favorite blue or a book he thought she might enjoy. Olivia found herself falling in love with him too, slowly and then all at once, like a sunrise she had not noticed until the world was suddenly bright with it. She loved his steadiness, his integrity, his quiet kindness. She loved the way he treated everyone with respect, from Doc Harrison to the Mexican laborers who worked the cattle with him. She loved his hands, strong and calloused from work, but gentle when they helped her over a rough patch of ground. She loved his voice, deep and calm, like an anchor in a storm. 2 months after their first church social, Samuel invited Olivia to visit his ranch. It was a Sunday, and Mrs. Chen had given Olivia the whole day off as a special favor. Samuel arrived with a wagon and a picnic basket, and they drove out of Deeming into the wide open country beyond. The ranch was modest but well-maintained, with a sturdy adobe house, a barn, several corrals and grazing land that stretched to the distant mountains. Samuel showed her everything with obvious pride, introducing her to his 3 hired hands, all young Mexican men who tipped their hats respectfully. He showed her the cattle, healthy Herefords that he was carefully breeding for both meat and hardiness. He showed her the vegetable garden he was trying to establish, fighting the dry soil and intense heat with irrigation ditches and shade cloth. "It is not much yet," Samuel said as they stood on the porch of the house, looking out over the land, "but I am building something here. Something that will last. I have plans to expand the herd, to build a proper bunkhouse for the hands, to maybe even start raising horses. I want to create something solid, something that cannot be taken away." "It is wonderful," Olivia said honestly. "You should be very proud of what you have accomplished." Samuel turned to look at her, and Olivia saw that nervous expression on his face again, the one he had worn when he asked her to the church social. "Olivia, I need to tell you something. I need to be honest about my feelings because I cannot keep them inside any longer." Olivia's heart began to pound. "What is it, Samuel?" "I love you," he said simply. "I have loved you since the day I found you behind the lucky star, since I saw the courage and dignity in you, even when you had been brought to your lowest point. I love your strength and your kindness. I love the way you laugh and the way you listen. I love how hard you work and how you never complain. I love everything about you, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that you deserve to be loved and cared for and cherished." Tears sprang to Olivia's eyes. "Samuel, You do not have to say anything right now," Samuel interrupted gently. "I know this is sudden, and I know you have been through a hard time. I am not asking you to make any decisions today. I just needed you to know how I feel. I needed you to understand that when I look at you, I see my future. I see the woman I want to build this ranch with, the woman I want to grow old with. I see home." Olivia reached out and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. "Samuel Lawson, you are the best man I have ever known. When you found me, I was broken. I had lost everything, even hope. But you showed me that there was still goodness in the world, that there were still people who cared about more than just themselves. You gave me back my life, and somewhere along the way you stole my heart completely. Samuel's eyes widened. "Olivia, are you saying?" "I am saying I love you too," Olivia said, her voice shaking with emotion. "I love you so much it frightens me sometimes. I never thought I would feel this way about anyone. I never thought anyone would see me the way you see me, as someone worthy and valuable. You make me believe in myself again. You make me believe in everything good." Samuel pulled her into his arms, holding her close, and Olivia rested her head against his chest, hearing the steady thunder of his heartbeat. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, the New Mexico sun warm on their shoulders and the future stretching out before them like the endless desert sky. "Marry me," Samuel whispered into her hair. "I know it is soon. I know we have only known each other a few months, but I am sure of this. I am sure of you. Marry me, Olivia. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that you will never go hungry again, that you will never be alone again, that you will always have someone who loves you exactly as you are." Olivia pulled back just enough to look up at him, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Samuel, I will marry you. There is nothing I want more." Samuel kissed her then, a gentle kiss that tasted of salt from her tears and sweetness from the lemonade they had drunk with their picnic. It was Olivia's first real kiss, and it felt like a promise, like a covenant, like the beginning of something beautiful and lasting. They were married 6 weeks later at the same church where they had attended their first social together. Olivia wore a simple white dress that rose in misses. Chen had helped her sew, with lace at the collar and cuffs. Samuel wore his best suit, black with a vest, and looked so handsome that Olivia's breath caught when she saw him waiting for her at the altar. The ceremony was small but joyful. Mrs. Chen and Rose sat in the front row, both crying happy tears. Frank Potter stood up with Samuel as his best man. Doc Harrison gave Olivia away, having volunteered for the role when he learned she had no family. Most of the town turned out, filling the pews, all of them curious about the romance that had blossomed between the cowboy rancher and the girl he had rescued. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed Olivia tenderly, and the church erupted in applause. Olivia felt a wave of joy so intense it was almost painful. She had been so lost, so hopeless, and now she was found. She was home. They held a small reception in the churchyard, with food that half the town had contributed. There was music and dancing and laughter. Maria Gonzalez gave them a beautiful quilt she had made. Doc Harrison gave them a set of medical supplies for the ranch, practical but thoughtful. Mrs. Chen gave Olivia a cookbook that had belonged to her own mother, passed down through generations. As the sun set and the lanterns were lit, Samuel and Olivia slipped away from the party. They climbed into the wagon and drove out to the ranch, to the home that was now truly theirs together. Samuel carried Olivia over the threshold, and she laughed, giddy with happiness and the strangeness of it all. "I still cannot believe this is real," Olivia said as Samuel set her down in the main room of the house. "6 months ago, I was sleeping on the ground and eating scraps. Now I am married to the most wonderful man in the world and I have a home and a future. How did I get so lucky?" "Luck had nothing to do with it," Samuel said, pulling her close. "You survived because you are strong. You found happiness because you deserved it. And I married you because I could not imagine my life without you in it." Their wedding night was tender and sweet. 2 people learning each other, discovering the intimacy of marriage with patience and gentle humor. Olivia had been nervous, having only the vaguest understanding of what to expect, but Samuel was kind and careful, making sure she felt safe and cherished. Afterward, lying in his arms in the darkness, listening to the coyotes singing in the distance, Olivia felt a peace she had never known before. The months that followed were the happiest of Olivia's life. She threw herself into making the ranch house a true home, sewing curtains for the windows, planting flowers near the door, organizing the kitchen until it was efficient and welcoming. She learned to cook the hearty meals that Samuel and the ranch hands needed after long days of hard work. She learned to preserve food for the winter, to tend the vegetable garden, to even help with some of the lighter ranch chores. Samuel taught her to ride, patiently guiding her through the basics until she could sit a horse confidently. They would ride out together in the evenings, watching the sun set over the mountains, talking about their plans and dreams. Samuel wanted to expand the ranch, to build a legacy they could pass on to children someday. Olivia wanted to start a small school in Deeming, to teach the children of the town who had no access to education. "You would be a wonderful teacher," Samuel said one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the stars appear. "You have so much knowledge and so much patience. Those children would be lucky to learn from you." "Maybe in a year or two," Olivia said. "First, I want to focus on building our life here. I want to make sure the ranch is running smoothly. And I want to give us time to just be together, to be newlyweds without the weight of too many responsibilities." Samuel took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I love you more every single day." "Is that even possible? I think I am supposed to reach a limit, but instead I just keep finding new reasons to love you." Olivia leaned against him, content. "I feel the same way. You are my miracle, Samuel Lawson, my second chance at life. My proof that good things can come from terrible circumstances." Winter came to southern New Mexico, bringing cooler temperatures and occasional rain that turned the desert briefly green. Olivia celebrated her first Christmas as a married woman, decorating the house with pine boughs Samuel cut from the mountains and baking more cookies and cakes than two people could possibly eat. They invited the ranch hands to join them for Christmas dinner, and the house was full of laughter and warmth. In January, Olivia realized she was pregnant. She waited until she was certain before telling Samuel, wanting to be absolutely sure. When she finally shared the news one evening after dinner, Samuel's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, spinning her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby," he kept saying. "We are going to have a baby." "Olivia, you have made me the happiest man alive." "You are not worried?" Olivia asked. "About the responsibility, the expense, the changes?" "Worried? No. Excited, yes. Determined to be the best father I can be, absolutely, but not worried. We will figure it out together, just like we have figured out everything else." Samuel placed his hand gently on Olivia's stomach, his expression full of wonder. "Our child. Part you, part me. A new beginning." The pregnancy was not always easy. Olivia suffered from morning sickness that lasted well into the afternoon. The summer heat was oppressive, making her feel slow and heavy. But Samuel was attentive and caring, making sure she rested when she needed to, taking on extra work around the house so she would not have to strain herself. Doc Harrison checked on her regularly, pronouncing her healthy and the baby strong. Mrs. Chen visited often, bringing soups and advice and companionship. Rose, now married and pregnant herself, would sit with Olivia on the porch and they would talk about their hopes for their children, about the kind of mothers they wanted to be. In late August, after a labor that lasted through the night and into the following afternoon, Olivia gave birth to a son. He was perfect, with a shock of dark hair like his father and eyes that would eventually turn the same hazel as his mother's. They named him Thomas, after Olivia's father, with the middle name Samuel. Samuel held his son with a mixture of terror and awe, his large hands cradling the tiny baby as though he were made of spun glass. "He is so small," Samuel whispered. How can anything be this small and still be alive? He is perfect, Olivia said from the bed, exhausted but glowing with joy. He is ours, and he is perfect. Thomas was a good baby, generally content as long as he was fed and dry. Olivia discovered reserves of strength she had not known she possessed, able to function on interrupted sleep and still manage the household. Samuel was a devoted father, taking Thomas out to the barn to show him the horses, talking to him constantly even though the baby could not possibly understand, changing diapers without complaint. "I want him to know he is loved," Samuel explained to Olivia. "I want him to grow up secure and confident, knowing that his parents adore him. I want him to have everything I did not have after my parents died." When Thomas was 6 months old, Olivia finally opened the conversation about starting a school in Deeming. The town had grown in the past year, with more families settling in the area, and there was a real need for education. Samuel encouraged her, even offering to help fund the construction of a small schoolhouse on a plot of land near the church. "Are you sure you can manage both the ranch and a child and helping me with the school?" Olivia asked. "I do not want to burden you." "You are not a burden," Samuel said firmly. "Your dreams are not a burden. I want you to have the school you have always wanted. I want you to teach those children and watch them grow. We will make it work. We always do." Construction on the schoolhouse began that spring. It was a simple structure, one large room with windows on both sides for light and ventilation, a wood stove for heat, and a small bell tower. Samuel and several men from town did much of the work themselves, raising the walls and hammering together desks. Maria Gonzalez donated slates and chalk from her store. Doc Harrison contributed a globe and several maps. By summer, the school was ready. Olivia started with 8 students, ranging in age from 6 to 12. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, history, and geography, adapting her lessons to each child's level. She was patient but firm, kind but demanding of effort. The children adored her, and soon their parents were telling her that their sons and daughters were coming home excited about learning, begging to practice their letters and do their sums. The school grew. By the second year, Olivia had 15 students. By the third, she had 22 and was considering hiring an assistant teacher. Samuel teased her about her success, calling her the most important person in Deeming next to the sheriff and the doctor. Life settled into a rhythm that was both busy and deeply satisfying. The ranch prospered, Samuel's careful breeding and good business sense paying off in healthy cattle and steady profits. The school flourished, producing students who went on to find work as clerks, teachers, and bookkeepers. And the Lawson family grew. 2 years after Thomas was born, Olivia had a daughter they named Grace, a sunny child with blonde curls and her father's whiskey-colored eyes. 3 years after that came another son, William, who was adventurous and bold from the moment he could crawl. The house that had seemed so spacious when Olivia first arrived was now full of life and noise and laughter. There were toys scattered across the floor, children's drawings pinned to the walls, and the constant sound of small feet running and young voices calling out. It was chaotic and exhausting and absolutely perfect. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Samuel took Olivia back to the spot behind the Lucky Star where they had first met. The saloon was under new ownership now, Samuel having sold his share to focus entirely on the ranch, but the alley looked much the same. "I will never forget the first time I saw you," Samuel said, holding Olivia's hand. "Standing there with that rotten apple, looking at me like you would fight me for it if you had to. You were fierce and proud and desperately trying not to cry. I fell in love with you right then, I think, though I did not have the sense to recognize it." Olivia smiled, remembering. I thought you were going to tell me to move along, to stop making the place look bad. Instead, you offered me the kindness I needed most in the world. You saved my life that day, Samuel." "No," Samuel said gently. "You saved your own life by surviving long enough to get here. I just had the privilege of being there when you needed help. And I have been privileged every day since to watch you thrive and grow and become the amazing woman I always knew you were." They stood in the alley, middle-aged now, their hands weathered by work and time, their faces marked with lines earned through worry and laughter. But when Olivia looked at Samuel, she still saw the handsome cowboy who had promised she would never go hungry again. And Samuel, looking at Olivia, still saw the brave woman who had refused to give up even when the world seemed determined to break her. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked softly. "Tying yourself to a woman you found digging through trash? You could have married someone from a good family, someone with a dowry and connections." Samuel pulled her close, kissing her forehead. "I could never regret the best decision I ever made. You are my partner, my love, my home. You gave me Thomas and Grace and William. You built a school that is educating the next generation. You made our house a place of warmth and welcome. You made my life meaningful in ways I never imagined possible. So no, Olivia Lawson, I do not regret a single moment." Olivia wrapped her arms around her husband, feeling the steady beat of his heart, the strength of his embrace. "I love you," she whispered. "I will love you until the day I die and beyond. And I will love you just as long," Samuel promised, "forever and always." They walked home together as the sun set, painting the New Mexico sky in shades of orange and purple and gold. 3 children waited for them, probably causing some minor chaos that would need to be dealt with. The ranch would need tending tomorrow, and Olivia had lessons to prepare for Monday's classes. Life was full and demanding and sometimes overwhelming, but it was good. It was so very good. Years continued to pass, marked by birthdays and holidays and the small daily triumphs and challenges of family life. Thomas grew into a serious young man who loved working the ranch with his father. Grace became a teacher herself, taking over Olivia's school when Olivia finally retired at 60. William moved to Silver City to start a freight business but visited often with his growing family. Samuel and Olivia grew old together, their hair turning gray, their steps slowing, but their love never dimming. They would sit together on the porch in the evenings, holding hands and watching the sunset, talking about their children and grandchildren, remembering the journey that had brought them to this peaceful twilight. "You remember what you said to me that first day?" Olivia asked one evening when they were both in their 70s. "Behind the lucky star, I said a lot of things," Samuel replied, his voice rougher with age but still warm. "Which particular words are you thinking of? You said I would never go hungry again with you. You promised me that." Samuel squeezed her hand gently. "And did I keep that promise?" "You did," Olivia said, tears in her eyes though she was smiling. "You kept that promise and every other promise you ever made to me. You gave me a life beyond my wildest dreams. You gave me love and security and a family and a purpose. You gave me everything. And you gave me just as much," Samuel said. "You took a lonely cowboy who was good at raising cattle but not much else and taught him how to build a real life. You filled my home with love and laughter. You made me better than I ever could have been alone. We saved each other, Olivia. That is the truth of it." They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, the same stars that had watched over them through decades of marriage, through joy and sorrow, through triumph and hardship. The desert night settled around them, cool and peaceful, and Olivia thought about the long road that had led her here, every hard step and painful moment that had somehow culminated in this beautiful, blessed life. She had been picking through trash for food when Samuel Lawson walked into her life and changed everything. She had been at her lowest point, broken and hopeless and certain that the world held nothing good for her anymore. But she had been wrong. The world had held Samuel. It had held love and redemption and second chances. Samuel died peacefully in his sleep at 78, with Olivia holding his hand. She mourned him deeply, missing his presence every moment of every day. But she did not despair. She had their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren around her. She had the school that bore her name, still teaching new generations. She had the ranch that Samuel had built with his own hands, now run by Thomas and his sons. Most of all, she had the memories of 46 years of marriage to the finest man she had ever known. She had the certainty that she had been loved completely, and had loved just as completely in return. She had lived a full life, rich with purpose and meaning, all because one cowboy had looked at a desperate woman and seen someone worth saving. Olivia lived another 7 years after Samuel's death, active and engaged until nearly the end. When she finally passed at 85, surrounded by family in the house Samuel had built, her last thought was of him. Of the moment their eyes had first met in that dusty alley behind the Lucky Star, of his voice saying those words that had changed her life forever. "You will never go hungry again with me." He had been true to his promise, and in the end, that promise had been about so much more than food. It had been about hope and home and belonging. It had been about two people finding each other when they needed each other most, and building something beautiful from that chance meeting. It had been about love, the kind of love that transforms and heals and endures beyond death itself. The little schoolhouse in Deeming still stands, though it is now a museum dedicated to the woman who founded it. The ranch still operates, run by the great-great-grandchildren of Samuel and Olivia Lawson. And in the churchyard, 2 headstones stand side by side, marking the resting place of a cowboy and the woman he loved. The epitaph on Olivia's stone, chosen by her children, reads simply, "She was hungry and alone, but love gave her a feast. She was lost, but love brought her home." And on Samuel's stone, equally simple, "He found her in darkness and brought her into light. A good man, a loving husband, a father who never forgot his promise." Their story became legend in Deeming, passed down through generations, told to children as an example of how kindness can change the world. How one act of compassion can ripple outward, creating waves of goodness that touch countless lives. How love, when it is real and true and deep, can overcome any obstacle and heal any wound. Because in the end, that is what their story was about. Not about the hardship Olivia endured or the poverty she escaped. Not about the successful ranch Samuel built or the school Olivia founded. Those were all part of it, certainly, but they were not the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter was that 2 people met in an alley in Deeming, New Mexico, in the summer of 1882. One was at the end of her rope, picking through trash for food, certain she would die alone and forgotten. The other was a good man who could not walk past someone in need without trying to help. He offered her a meal and made her a promise. She accepted both with gratitude and grew into her strength. Together, they built a life that mattered, a love that endured, a legacy that lived on long after they were gone. And if that is not a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth celebrating, then there are no stories worth telling at all.